Hello and thanks for joining us. The purpose of this video is to share some information that's really important if you live in Britain and are concerned about human health, the quality of our food, animals, plants, and the environment in general. That subject is solar geoengineering, sometimes called climate geoengineering, sun dimming, cloud seeding, and a variety of other terms. We're three concerned citizens from different parts of the country: London, Scotland, and the southwest of England, and we'd like to share some of our recent experiences and observations about what's going on in the skies. What we're going to tell you may come as a surprise. It may start to explain some things that have been puzzling you, or it may be old news. Whatever the case, please watch to the end because we're going to share some suggestions about what can be done to stop unregulated geoengineering. I'm Alex, and I live on the outskirts of London, looking towards Sussex and Kent.
My name's Rosalind. I live in the Highlands of Scotland. I'm a trained scientist and I've worked on the land all my life. So I'm very observant of the natural world. And just after the lockdowns, I started noticing that things weren't right in the skies. And so I started being curious and looking into it in more detail.
Hello, and I'm David. I live in the Cotswolds, and I'm very interested in finding out what the truth is about all of this, because we're told one thing by the media and the government, and we observe a completely different story.
So let me begin by explaining how I came to be concerned about what's going on in the skies. In 2023, I came back after a time living abroad to find a Britain that was even cloudier and damper than usual. And by 2024, I was observing some very strange phenomenon in the skies from my place on a hill just outside London. I have a big picture window at the back of the flat looking westwards. And what I was seeing were planes flying around and over the sun, leaving very distinct trails, often at sunset and sometimes at the beginning of the day. Now, on Sunday, the 24th of October, 2024, the day started with a clear blue sky. But fairly early on, around 9 o'clock, planes started flying, leaving trails over the western sky, and within a short period of time, about an hour, this grid that you can see had been built. Meanwhile, other side of the building, looking eastwards, this was happening. Again, all of those lines and trails I directly observed as coming as a result of emissions from the back of planes. And by lunchtime, the whole of the sky was grey and the sun did not appear again. This sort of thing happened many times. And I watched repeatedly as we move from a situation where we have a blue sky to one with a covered in a thin haze with dimmer sun or complete whiteout. So, as this happened repeatedly, I would often see planes flying quite low overhead, directly over the house, leaving trails like this, often in crosses. And I'd start to watch them, to look for them on Flight Radar 24, which is a website that tracks most aircraft in or around UK airspace. And the only reason I understand that planes should not show up on this is if they are allowed to turn off their transponders for military or security reasons. So it's very strange to see such a large number of aircraft flying overhead that were not traceable. So since 2024, I have noticed a shift in weather patterns and what I think are weather technologies. There's been less obvious spraying, but other things happening in terms of cloud formation and sudden changes in the weather, which I believe are due to other weather modification technologies. Not going to go into these in this video, but just to register the fact that other means are available. And there are still days where there are intense bouts of spraying which change the weather. So if we look at this picture of the southeast of England from the 9th of May 2026, this is from Zoom Earth, you can see there's a pattern, a network of lines. Meanwhile, I was underneath watching those lines fly being created above my head and all around in the sky. And these heavy spray days often correlate with air quality warnings. I tend to check on various weather apps and find that there is an air quality warning advising people with sensitivity to respiratory issues, and even sometimes the whole population are advised not to spend time outside while there are high levels of particles in the air, as I say, correlating with high levels of spraying in the skies. From an early experience of 2024, when I did a lot of energetic gardening while one of these spraying operations was going on, that left me quite unwell with a sore throat and a cough. Meanwhile, there have been things appearing on cars and windows. This is a picture that I took on the 10th of March 2025. And that evening, I watched with someone else as strange white particles floated in the air in the light of a street lamp. This is still ongoing, and the explanations that periodically appear in the mainstream of that it's pollen or Sahara dust don't make sense of what is effectively a year-round but relatively new phenomenon of gunk appearing on surfaces. So now I'm going to hand over to Rosalind to tell us about what she's been experiencing in the Scottish Highlands.
So it all started for me, as I say, after the lockdowns, when the weather just seemed odd. And as I say, lots of planes had started flying over that we'd never seen before, and I would watch the skies haze over. And as I carried on observing, other strange things happened where the sky was hazing over, but then actually the clouds were dropping and kind of separating out. And then you sometimes get a dark layer underneath the clouds. And then the weather would become really cold and windy. And that just totally freaked me out, quite honestly. So I started asking other people if they'd been noticing changes in the weather after they'd seen planes fly over. And some people were like, oh, no, nothing. And then other people were like, oh, yeah, that's been going on for decades. And I was like, okay. So I started looking into it more, spoke to MPs, all sorts of people, and I just got fobbed off. And then you realise when you're being fobbed off, then something isn't quite right. So I kept going and sort of started talking to farmers, and they've been observing the same patterns happening, and also things changing with their crop yields. So one farmer grows turnips. He says his turnips no longer become a good size. The grass yields are down. There's not enough hay being produced for the livestock. Other people report that their tomatoes aren't ripening because there's not enough sunlight. I've observed, like last year, we barely mowed our lawn because there wasn't enough sun. The grass just wasn't growing. So there's more and more people in our local area talking about the changes in the weather, correlating it with what's happening with the sky, and how it's impacting things on the ground, how the trees are dying. We have these freak storms which knock trees over and the root plates come up. And we had 50 trees down in the last big storm, and you inspect the root plates and the roots are dead. So then this leads into, I mean, why could the roots be dead, and how does that link in with what's happening in the sky? When you do your research, you find out that there's more aluminium in the soil because of what's coming down. So, yeah, this is what's causing crops to not grow, trees to die. And to back this up, I've got some data that a farmer has shared with me. He did some mineral analysis on silage that he has. So I'll share this. Right. So here you can see forage mineral profile, and everything in red is abnormal. So you've got high levels of aluminium, iron, chloride, sodium, and calcium's quite high. So the aluminium, which people talk about being falling out of the sky, is showing up in these mineral analysis profiles that people are doing. And I've heard this from other farmers as well. Okay, so the other thing that's been happening is people locally have been sharing flight radar screenshots of planes that are doing abnormal flight patterns. This one here from Cologne, going back to Cologne, doing circles around the Highlands, just to the west of where we live. And this one occurred last summer, and it was immediately before a freak weather event. I've got another one too, but I don't need to share both, given the time. So all these observations are going on, and they link together and they show a pattern of strange things happening in the sky and people seeing changes in real time on the ground. So it's incredibly concerning. So it'd be great if just people would start looking up more, observing and writing down anything that they're noticing, things they're noticing change, they're growing, anything wrong with their livestock, just so we could start building a pattern, maybe doing some more soil analysis. It would be helpful.
So I live in the rural Cotswolds in the southwest of England, and I've got 4 data points to share. The first is that I'm surrounded by a sheep farm, and the farmer has told me, and by the way, it's a 5th generation farm, and they've had a weather station on their farm for over 100 years. And all of his sheep for the last couple of years have suffered from a foot rot, which he said he's never had it. And if you do have it, it doesn't happen at this time of the year on that kind of soil. And when I said to him, what do you think the cause is? He just points to the sky and he says all of that rubbish that they're pushing out the back of the planes. So that's one story. The second story is about 3 miles away, another farmer who's got nearly 1,000 acres. They have lost 90% of the ash trees in their forest in the last 2, 3 years. 8th generation farm, they've never lost ash trees. And when they've analyzed the trees, they found high levels of aluminium and no root structure. So similar to your story, Rosalind. The next data point is at Christmas this year. I was chatting with the most senior pharmacist for big animals in the Cotswolds, and she's been in her job for 40 years. She's retiring in June this year. And she said that in the last 2 winters, they've had more cases of cow and horse pneumonia than she's had in the last 40 years of being a vet added up together. And when I asked her what she thought the cause of that was, again, she pointed to the sky and said, all that SHIT that they're spraying out the back of aeroplanes.
I've had that too. Lots of farmers have been saying the same with pneumonia,
Yes.
the fluctuations in temperature.
And the fourth data point is I walk my dog every day on the Bathurst estate in the middle of Cirencester. And I've got lots of local friends that I made. And one of the friends I made who I dog walk with regularly, he is a private pilot for a billionaire. And I started talking to him about this 2 or 3 years ago. He said, "Oh, it's a load of nonsense. I've heard the rumors, but it's just not true. There's no such thing as a chemtrail." And I've sent him more and more information, and he shares it with a WhatsApp group of other private pilots. And they've all started now sharing more and more information. And one of his latest data inputs to me a few weeks ago was that this group gets approached by a recruitment company who are looking for pilots to do this work. And one of the conditions is they have to be single and have no dependents. And a few of them have left the group, and he's heard through word of mouth or chatting to the person that, well, I've taken up a job at this airport, doing some saving the planet stuff. But they've all signed 9-inch deep NDAs and confidentiality agreements. So it's going back to my little introduction. I want to find out what the truth is. Because if farmers' trees are dying, if farmers' sheep are suffering from foot rot, if the senior vet of the Cotswolds has never seen pneumonia and keeps blaming it's coming from the sky, and private pilots in a WhatsApp group have gone from 3 years ago completely skeptical to sharing more and more evidence, and knowing that some of their members are pulling out of the club because they've signed a confidentiality agreement and they've gone off to do work that can only be done by a single person with no dependents. There's too much evidence. And by the way, I live on the top of a hill. I've seen this myself 2 or 3 times, where I've watched very early in the morning at sunrise, 3 planes flying over in formation in a circle, a figure of 8, and 30 minutes later, I couldn't see 20 feet in front of me with fog. And so I've witnessed this myself, plus spoken to local farmers and vets. So I want to know what the truth is, because it's very clear the government keeps saying, we don't do any of this, but it's going on. So if you're not doing it, who is doing it? I want to get to the bottom of it. It's harming our trees, it's harming our cattle, it's harming the soil that our crops are grown on, it's harming us as human beings and nature.
So that is some very powerful testimony from different parts of the country. One other piece that I think is helpful to know before we move on to the question of what can be done, which is the fact that the UK seems to be a kind of test bed for solo geoengineering. And evidence for this is the British taxpayer is funding currently 2 official experiments in sun dimming. At the same time, there are no laws in place to regulate geoengineering in any form. So that means that the UK is pretty much a sitting duck for anybody who cares for commercial or ideological or any reason to come and experiment here. And meanwhile, our parliament, 650 MPs in our parliament, have no interest. And to my certain knowledge, a number of MPs have been approached and given all sorts of information. When they debated the petition by many people about to ban solar geoengineering, only a handful turned up. So that means that Britain is effectively in danger, and the political bodies who should be looking out to protect us aren't doing so. So that brings it back to us. So in a country where there's very little awareness of geoengineering in the first place, very little awareness that it's even possible, the most important thing is to raise public awareness and understanding. So the first thing that you can do if you're worried is to share this video with anyone you think might be receptive. However, we all know that the average person can be very resistant to hearing things that are difficult or unpleasant. So the second thing that can be done is that we can start conversations with people and groups who already have a strong interest in the environment and food growing and the health of animals and plants. So people like farmers and food growers, beekeepers, conservation groups, allotment holders, and so on. These are the kinds of people that are likely to notice and to also care because they're directly affected. This is the kind of thing that I've been working on with a group called Britons for a Clean Atmosphere. They're a small group of volunteers, and to my knowledge, they're the only group in the country at the moment who are working in an organised way to try and bring some awareness to the problem of unregulated geoengineering in the UK. So sign up to Britons for a Clean Atmosphere mailing list. It's free, and you'll keep in touch with things that they're doing to start a new movement to clean up the skies. And finally, if you have any insider knowledge or proposals for collaboration, you can get in touch with us at skywatch144@protonmail.com. We're not offering to found an organisation or to answer lots of queries. We're only 3 individuals with our own responsibilities. But if you have an idea that you think could be both workable and effective, we'd love to hear from you. So thanks very much for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.